Hi students, as you know, NDA has introduced a new unit in the chemistry syllabus for both the NEET and JEE from the year 2024 onwards. The new unit included is the principles related to practical chemistry. Since it is a newly introduced topic, the necessary study materials may not be available in print and visual media. But you need not worry. I am uploading video classes through my YouTube channel explaining the theory related to chemistry practical, which include a lot of multiple choice questions and their well explained answers. By the way, I am Dr. Cyriac Matthew, a retired associate professor in chemistry. The purpose of my channel, Chemistry Master, is to upload video classes related to topics in chemistry within secondary, undergraduate, and postgraduate levels. At present, I am uploading video classes related to NEET, JEE Main and Advanced, and other entrance examinations. There will be a set of video classes for each chapter. In the present set of videos, we discuss the principles related to practical chemistry. This set includes 6 video classes. The first one, titled as Principles Related to Practical Chemistry, Part 1A, explained detection of extra elements and detection of functional groups. The second, titled as Principles Related to Practical Chemistry, Part 1B, contains multiple choice questions related to Part 1A. Part 2 explains preparation of some organic and inorganic compounds and a titrimetric analysis. Part 3, qualitative analysis for anions, and Part 4, qualitative analysis for cations. The Part 5 explains some physical chemistry experiments. At the end of each part, multiple choice questions related to that part are explained. Even if you go through a handbook of chemistry practical several times, you may not be able to remember the experiments and the theory behind it. But an audiovisual presentation will catch your attention. That is why I have introduced a lot of animations in these video classes so that you will get a feel of doing the experiments in the laboratory. However, animations never represent the real situation. And this is not an instruction manual for doing the experiments in the lab. The main purpose is to make you understand the theory behind the experiments. In the laboratory, you have to take several precautionary measures while doing the experiments. For your convenience, I have introduced video chapters or timestamps in the description part of the videos. This will help you to watch and rewatch separately the different topics explained in a particular video. The links for other videos are also given in the description part. You can easily move to any of these 6 videos using these links. I hope these video classes will definitely help you to understand the theory behind the experiments. If you like the video, please subscribe my channel and forward to others. You can expect similar video classes from other chapters of Class 11 and Class 12 Chemistry soon. And in this unit, we study about the chemistry involved in the preparation of some organic and inorganic compounds and a titrimetric analysis. The following organic compounds we have to consider: 1 acetanilide, 2 paranitroacetanilide, 3 aniline yellow, and 4 iodoform. The inorganic compounds we have to study are the preparation of Morse salt and the preparation of potash alum. First, we consider the preparation of acetanilide. Acetanilide is prepared by the replacement of one hydrogen atom of amino group by CH3CO group or the acetyl group in presence of glacial acetic acid. The process is called acetylation. Acetylation could be carried out in two ways. First, aniline is gently refluxed with a mixture of acetic anhydride and a glacial acetic acid. This mixture is called acetylating mixture. This is aniline, acetic anhydride, and we reflux the mixture with the glacial acetic acid, we get acetanilide. In the second method, we treat aniline with a mixture of acetyl chloride and a dry pyridine. Here, acetylating mixture is this mixture, acetyl chloride and a dry pyridine. So, aniline, this is acetyl chloride, in dry pyridine, we get acetanilide. Take about 5 ml of aniline in a 100 ml round bottomed flask and acetylating mixture containing 5 ml acetic anhydride and 5 ml acetic acid, glacial acetic acid is added to it. So, aniline plus acetic anhydride and glacial acetic acid. Fit an air condenser on the mouth of the round bottomed flask after adding a few pumice stones to avoid bumping of liquid when the temperature rises. The mixture is gently refluxed on a water bath at about 70 to 80 degree for 10 to 15 minutes. Alternatively, we can use 5 ml acetyl chloride and 5 ml dry pyridine as the acetylating mixture. Remove the reaction mixture from the water bath and cool it and pour it slowly into about 200 ml ice cold water taken in a beaker with stirring. Filter the solid, wash it with cold water and recrystallize a small amount from hot water containing a little of methanol or ethanol. In this preparation, we have to consider some precautions. Handle acetic anhydride and acetyl chloride carefully as they cause irritation to eyes, and acetyl chloride also fumes in air. Store acetyl chloride under dry conditions. Distill pyridine before use because it absorbs moisture and the reaction does not take place under moist conditions. If aniline sample is too much colored, distill it before carrying out the experiment because yield is lowered with impure aniline. Use perfectly dry apparatus. Next, we will consider the preparation of para-nitroacetanilide. Para-nitroacetanilide is prepared by the nitration of acetanilide using a mixture of concentrated nitric acid and concentrated sulfuric acid as nitrating reagent. The mixture of the two acids releases nitronium ion which act as an electrophile in the reaction. So the reaction could be represented like this: HNO3 plus sulfuric acid giving nitronium ion and HSO4 minus. Nitronium ion attacks the benzene ring containing anilide group mainly at the para position to give para-nitroacetanilide as a major product. This is an example of aromatic electrophilic substitution reaction. This is acetanilide, concentrated nitric acid and concentrated sulfuric acid, and this is the final product, that is para-nitroacetanilide, and that will be the major product in this reaction. Dissolve about 2 gram of acetanilide in 2 ml glacial acetic acid taken in a 100 ml beaker. Acetanilide plus glacial acetic acid, and this is concentrated sulfuric acid, and 4 ml concentrated sulfuric acid gradually with stirring to this mixture. The mixture becomes hot and a clear solution is obtained. Now cool the mixture in an ice bath. So this is an ice bath and we place the mixture inside it. And the temperature is maintained at 0 to 5 degrees Celsius. Now add a cold mixture of 1 ml concentrated nitric acid and 1 ml concentrated sulfuric acid to the viscous reaction mixture drop by drop with constant stirring. Care should be taken that the temperature do not rise above 10 degrees Celsius. Remove the beaker from the ice bath and allow the reaction mixture to attain room temperature. Let it stand for about 30 minutes. Stir the reaction mixture continuously and pour it on 100 gram crushed ice. Stir the mixture well and filter the compound so obtained. Wash with cold water and dry it. Recrystallize a small amount from alcohol. Colorless crystals of para-nitroacetyl separates. Small amounts of yellow orthonitroacetyl formed remain dissolved in the solution. Some precautions to be followed during the preparation. Do not allow the temperature of the reaction mixture to exceed 10 degrees Celsius during the addition of nitrating mixture. Add the mixture of concentrated nitric acid and sulfuric acid into the solution of acetyl lead slowly and carefully. Next, we shall consider the preparation of aniline yellow. Aniline yellow or para-aminobenzene can be prepared in good yield by rearrangement reaction of diisoaminobenzene with a small quantity of aniline hydrochloride in presence of aniline as solvent. Dissolve diisobenzene in aniline with a small quantity of aniline hydrochloride. Keep the mixture at 40 degrees Celsius for a short time. It gets converted to para-aminobenzene. The chemistry of conversion can be represented as follows. Diisoaminobenzene, HCl, we get benzene diazonin chloride and aniline. And we add some more aniline. Aniline is used as the solvent. This benzene diazonin chloride and aniline in excess generates para-aminoasobenzene or aniline yellow. A detailed procedure for the preparation is first dissolve 3 grams of finely powdered diisoaminobenzene in 7 ml of aniline in a 100 ml conical flask. Add 1.5 grams of finely powdered aniline hydrochloride to the above mixture. Warm the mixture with occasional shaking on a water bath at about 40 to 45 degrees Celsius for a period of about 1 hour. Now remove the flask from the water bath and allow the reaction mixture to stand at a room temperature for about 30 minutes. Add 9 ml of glacial acetic acid diluted with an equal volume of water and shake the reaction mixture thoroughly to convert excess aniline to its acetate, which is water soluble. Allow the mixture to stand for 15 minutes with occasional stirring. Filter the para-aminoasobenzene, wash with a little cold water and dry between the folds of a filter paper. Recrystallize a small portion of the crude para-aminoasobenzene from carbon tetrachloride. This is diisoaminobenzene, aniline. We take some amount of diisoaminobenzene and aniline. To that we are adding aniline hydrochloride. We place it in a water bath. and remove it from the water bath, cool it, and add 1:1 glacial acetic acid. Now place it on a shaker and shake well for some time. Remove it. Allow the mixture to stand for about 15 minutes with occasional stirring. Para-amino azobenzene. Filter the para-amino azobenzene, wash with a little cold water and dry between the folds of a filter paper. Recrystallize a small portion from carbon tetrachloride. Next is preparation of iodoform. Iodoform can be prepared either from acetone or from ethanol. If you use acetone, the following reactions take place. Sodium hydroxide and iodine generate sodium hypoiodate, and acetone react with the sodium hypoiodate and a triiodoacetone is formed. This triiodoacetone reacts with the sodium hydroxide, giving iodoform. The overall reaction is acetone plus 3I2 plus 4NaOH giving iodoform plus 3 sodium iodide, sodium acetate. From ethanol, sodium hydroxide first reacts with iodine giving sodium hypoiodate. It oxidizes ethanol to acetaldehyde. Then it is converted to triiodoacetaldehyde. And a triiodoacetaldehyde reacts with the sodium hydroxide giving iodoform. The overall reaction can be ethanol plus 4I2 plus 6NaOH giving iodoform plus 4NaI plus HCON. Take about 15 ml sodium hydroxide in a conical flask. Add 4 ml acetone to it. Then add about 5 gram powdered iodine. Stir well and keep in a water bath at about 70 to 80 degree for about 15 minutes. On cooling, iodoform separates. Wash with water and recrystallize from alcohol. Now let us consider the preparation of inorganic compounds. First, a preparation of mole salt. Mole salt is a double salt of parasulfate and ammonium sulfate with 6 molecules as water crystallization. It can be prepared in the following way. Dissolve about 7 grams of parasulfate and 3.4 gram of ammonium sulfate in 10 ml of distilled water containing in a 100 ml beaker by heating. About 1 ml dilute sulfuric acid is added to the flask and a concentrated solution by heating till the crystallization point is reached. Allow the mixture to cool to room temperature slowly. On cooling, light green crystals of ferrous ammonium sulfate separates out. Decant the mother liquor and wash the crystals by shaking with very small amounts of 1:1 cold water and alcohol mixture to remove sticking mother liquor. Separate the crystals by filtration. Wash with alcohol. Dry between the folds of a filter paper. The materials required are parasulfate, ammonium sulfate, distilled water, and a dilute sulfuric acid. The reaction could be represented as parasulfate plus ammonium sulfate 6H2O plus ammonium sulfate. Dilute sulfuric acid is added to prevent hydrolysis. So ferrous sulfate, ammonium sulfate, and distilled water, sulfuric acid dilute. We take 10 ml distilled water. To that we are adding 7 gram ferrous sulfate solution. Ferrous sulfate. Then we add ammonium sulfate about 3.5 gram. Add some dilute sulfuric acid. Stir well to dissolve. And now heat the mixture for some time, and it is concentrated and cooled to room temperature. The crystals of mole salt separate. It is a slightly green crystal. Another double salt we are going to prepare is potash alum. It is a double salt of potassium sulfate and aluminum sulfate with 24 molecules of water as water crystallization. Potash alum is prepared by heating equimolar proportions of potassium sulfate and aluminum sulfate. The reaction is represented like this. And this is the structure formula for potash alum. The materials required are aluminum sulfate, potassium sulfate, distilled water, and dilute sulfuric acid. We place about 10 ml of distilled water in a 100 ml beaker and heat it to about 40 degrees. Add 6.6 gram aluminum sulfate to it and dissolve it. Also add about 4 ml of dilute sulfuric acid to prevent hydrolysis. Add a 2.4 gram powdered potassium sulfate to the above solution. Heat the solution with constant stirring till potassium sulfate dissolves completely. Allow the solution to cool to room temperature slowly. As the solution cools, white crystals of potash alum separates out. Decant the mother liquor and wash the crystals by gently shaking with 1:1 cold water and alcohol mixture. Filter the crystals, dry it between the folds of a filter paper and note down the yield. Aluminum sulfate, this is potassium sulfate, distilled water, dilute sulfuric acid. We take about 10 ml distilled water and we heat it, and to that we are adding 6.6 gram aluminum sulfate. We stir it to dissolve the aluminum sulfate. Add also some dilute sulfuric acid. Now we add potassium sulfate 2.4 gram. Again stir it to dissolve. Now concentrate the mixture, remove from the burner, allow to cool to the room temperature. Now the crystals of potash alum separates. This is section 2 of this video. Here we discuss the theory of titrimetric analysis, and towards the end of the video we will discuss some multiple choice question related to this topic as well as the previous topic. Everything is made of chemicals. Chemical analysis provides answers to two important questions. One, what is it? That is qualitative analysis. Second one, how much is it? That is quantitative analysis. Qualitative analysis tells us what chemicals are present. Quantitative analysis tells us how much are the chemicals present. Thus, chemical analysis can be categorized as qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis. Knowledge of chemical composition of many substances is important in our daily lives. Analytical chemistry plays an important role in nearly all aspects of chemistry. For example, agricultural, clinical, environmental, forensic, manufacturing, metallurgical, and pharmaceutical chemistry. First, let us discuss the quantitative analysis. An analyte is a substance which is to be analyzed for. Different methods are employed for quantitative measurement of the analyte, such as titrimetric analysis. It is also called volumetric analysis, gravimetric analysis, instrumental analysis, etc. Titrimetric analysis involves determination of the volume of a solution of accurately known concentration, which is required to react quantitatively with the measured volume of a solution of a substance of concentration of which is to be determined, and that solution is the analyte. The solution of accurately known concentration is called standard solution. The reagent of known concentration is called titrant, Titrant, and the solution being titrated is termed as titrand. Please note down the change in spelling: Titrant, titrant, and Titrand, titrand. We will explain first some of the terms used in titrimetric analysis. The standard solution or titrant is usually taken in the burette. So burette, and the solution taken here is called a titrant. A known amount of the solution of unknown concentration, and that is a titrant, is usually taken in the conical flask. And this is the titration flask or conical flask. To carry out a titrimetric analysis, the standard solution is added from the burette. The process of adding standard solution to the solution of unknown concentration till the reaction just get completed is called titration. The equivalence point in a titration is the theoretical point reached when the amount of added titrant is chemically equivalent to the amount of analyte in the sample. It is not possible to determine the equivalence point of a titration experimentally. However, we can estimate its position by observing some physical change related to condition of chemical equivalence. The requirements of a reaction that could be used for titrimetric analysis are the following. 1. The titrant, that is reagent of unknown concentration, must react completely and rapidly with the titrant, that is solution of known concentration, in a stoichiometric proportion. The reaction should be fast and there must be some change in physical or chemical property of the solution at the equivalence point. These changes can be detected by an indicator or by measuring the potential difference or current, etc. An indicator is an auxiliary reagent which is added to the reaction mixture. At the completion of the reaction, the indicator shows a visible change such as color change in the solution being titrated. Indicator and experimental conditions selected should be such that the difference between the visible endpoint and the theoretical endpoint is minimum. The standard solution may not always be taken in the burette. Sometimes we must do the titration in the other way. Let us see how to carry out a titrimetric analysis. The position of the equivalent point determined by observing some physical change is called the end point of the titration. Generally, difference occurs between the equivalence point, which is theoretical, and the endpoint we estimate. Endpoint is physically observed. This occurs because of the insufficiencies in physical changes and in our ability to observe them. The difference between equivalence point and the observed endpoint is called titration error. We always try to minimize this error. Indicators are often added to the analyte solution to produce an observable physical change. For example, color at or near the equivalence point. Let me show a titration. First, we add few drops of an indicator to a fixed volume of the titrant taken. This is titrant. Then we open the stopcock of the burette and run the titrant into the titrant taken till a faint color change is observed. Further addition of one more drop of the titrant, the color of the titrant changes completely. See this. Open the stopcock, a small color change, one more drop, total change in color of the titrant. This is taken as the end point, and we note down the volume of the titrant used. The single drop added may not be the exact amount of titrant needed. It will be higher always. That is why we say that the end point may not coincide with the equivalence point. Color change must be observed with the minimum amount of analyte. A standard solution can be defined in the following way. A solution whose concentration is known exactly is called a standard solution. Any substance which is stable at room temperature and does not react with the solvent in which it is dissolved can be directly weighed to prepare its standard solution. A primary standard. A primary standard is a highly purified compound that can be used as a reference material in titrations and in other analytical methods. It should be available in high purity, should possess atmospheric stability, absence of hydrate of water, should be readily soluble in water. Usually, the titration medium is water. Reasonably large molar mass so that the relative error associated with weighing the standard is minimized. It should be inexpensive. Commonly used primary standards. It is difficult to obtain an ideal primary standard. Therefore, substances having characteristics nearer to the primary standards are usually used. Some examples are given below. One is sodium carbonate. Molar mass is approximately 106 gram per mole. Potassium hydrogen phthalate, molar mass 204.23 gram per mole. Potassium dichromate, molar mass 294.14 gram per mole. Oxalic acid, molar mass 106.03 gram per mole. We should count the molar mass of water also. Ferroammonium sulfate or mole salt 392.14 gram per mole. Even though oxalic acid and ferroammonium sulfate contain water of hydration, they are considered as primary standards because of their sufficient stability. There are some criteria for a standard solution. It must be sufficiently stable so that it is necessary to determine its concentration only once. That is, its concentration may not change on standing. Must react rapidly with analyte so that the time required between additions of reagent is minimized. It must react more or less completely with the analyte so that satisfactory endpoints are realized. Should undergo a selective reaction with the analyte that can be described by a balanced equation. Now, secondary standard solutions. A secondary standard solution is one whose concentration is found out by titrating with a standard solution of a primary standard. A secondary standard cannot be prepared by direct weighing of the substance. For example, sodium hydroxide or potassium permanganate. Examples of titrimetric analysis. One is acidimetry and alkalimetry. This type of titrimetric analysis involves titrations of acids and bases. In acidimetry, we use standard solution of acid, and in alkalimetry, we use standard solution of a base. In quantitative estimation, through titration, molar concentration, that is molarity, is generally used. Sometimes normal concentration, that is normality, is also used. Molarity is defined in the following way. Molarity is equal to number of moles of the solute divided by volume of the solution in liters. Number of moles is equal to mass of the substance divided by molar mass. Mass of the substance A, let it be WA gram. Molar mass of the substance A, let it be MA gram per mole. Then molarity of the solution will be WA by MA, and that is the number of moles, divided by V liters, or the equation will be WA by MA into volume in liters. Now let us calculate the mass of oxalic acid required to prepare 250 ml of 0.1 molar standard solution. The molar mass of oxalic acid is 126 gram per mole. Required volume of solution is 250 ml, that is 0.25 liter. Molarity is equal to 0.1. So WA is equal to M into molarity into MA, that is molar mass, then volume of solution in liter, that is 0.1 mole per liter, 126 gram per mole into 0.25 liter, that is 3.15 gram. So to prepare 0.1 molar standard solution of oxalic acid, we need 250 ml. For that, we have to dissolve 3.15 gram in 250 ml. When we calculate molar mass, we should include the water crystallization also. Normality is another concentration term. It is an older unit of concentration and not commonly used these days. Normality makes use of the chemical equivalent, which is the amount of one chemical species reacting stoichiometrically with another chemical species. Normality is the number of equivalents of the reagent present in 1 liter of the solution. It is defined as normality N, number of equivalents of solute divided by volume of solution in liters. In a neutralization reaction, one equivalent mass of a substance is that mass of the substance which either react with or supplies 1 mole of hydrogen ions in that solution. Therefore, equivalent mass is molar mass divided by basicity in the case of acid, molar mass divided by acidity in the case of bases. Basicity of an acid is the number of reactive hydrogen atoms present in it. Acidity of a base is the number of reactive hydroxyl ions present in a molecule. If we consider HCl HNO3 acetic acid, basicity is 1. For acetic acid, only this hydrogen can be replaced. So equivalent mass will be molar mass by 1. Sulfuric acid, basicity 2. Therefore, equivalent mass of sulfuric acid will be molar mass by 2. Sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide, acidity 1. So equivalent mass is molar mass by 1. Barium hydroxide, acidity is equal to 2. Therefore, equivalent mass will be molar mass by 2. At equivalence point in any titration, the number of equivalent of analyte present will be equal to the number of equivalents of standard reagent added. Now let us see indicators used in acid-base titrations. An acid-base indicator is a weak organic acid or a weak organic base. The undissociated form differs in color from its conjugate base or conjugate acid form. Acid-base indicators are sensitive to pH change. For most acid-base titration, we can select indicators which exhibit color change at a pH close to the equivalent point. Two very widely used indicators in acid-base titrations are phenolphthalein and methyl orange. Phenolphthalein is a weak acid. Therefore, it does not dissociate in acidic medium and remains in the unionized form, which is colorless. An acid-base indicator is usually prepared as solution in water, ethanol, or some other solvent. Here HPH represent phenolphthalein and it dissociate to pH minus, and this is the ionized form. The unionized form is colorless and the ionized form is pink in color. Unionized form exists in acid medium while ionized form exists in basic medium. Phenolphthalein shows color change in the pH range of 8.3 to 10. In acid medium, it is colorless, and in basic medium, it is pink in color. Another indicator that is used in acid-base titration is methyl orange. Methyl orange is a weak base. In the unionized form, it is yellow in color. It is used as the sodium salt, which is an orange-yellow solid. It is soluble in water. The indicator is prepared by dissolving 0.1 gram in 100 ml distilled water. If we abbreviate methyl orange as MEO, the color change could be represented as follows. Since it is a base, it accepts a proton and it is converted to HMeO. MEO is, that is, when it is unionized, it is yellow. And when accept a proton, it becomes red. It exists as yellow in basic medium and acid medium it is red in color. The color change occurs in the pH range of 3.1 to 4.4. So in less basic medium or in basic medium it is it is yellow in color, and in acid medium it is red in color. Now let us see how phenolphthalein change color during the end point. In acidic medium, phenolphthalein is colorless, and phenolphthalein exists in the lactone form, and this is represented as H2PH. Two replaceable hydrogen atoms are there. Here we take alkali in the burette because appearance of pink color is more perceptible to our eyes. Let us visualize how phenolphthalein change color at the end point. Suppose we have added the last drop of alkali from the burette. The medium becomes basic and the lactone form changes to quinonoid form. So this is the quinonoid form, which is pink in color. Now the medium is basic and the color changes to pink. That is due to the formation of this quinonoid form. The ionized form is pH 2 minus. So two negative charges are there. Now the pH is in the range 8.3 to 10, and it is basic. So the equation can be represented as H2pH giving 2H plus pH 2 minus, NaOH, Na plus OH minus, and this H plus from the indicator combines with OH minus giving water. For a weak acid against a strong base titration, phenolphthalein is the most suitable indicator. This is so because the last drop of added alkali bring the pH of the solution in the range in which phenolphthalein shows sharp color change. Now let us see how methyl orange change color during titration. In this case, we take the acid in the burette, and this is the alkali, and alkali is basic medium. So the color of methyl orange is yellow, and this is the unprotonated form, and we represent it as MEO, and we add it as the sodium salt. Here the pH will be less than 4.4. Now this is the benzenoid form, benzene ring. Now suppose that we add the last drop from the burette. Now let us see what happens. Now the medium becomes acidic, and the protonated form is now the quinonoid form. So this is the quinonoid form, and the pH is now 3.1 to 4.4, and it is acidic. So the unionized form, that is MEO, proton accepted form is HMEO. The benzenoid form MEO accepts a proton and changes to the quinonoid form, which is red in color. The quinonoid form HMEO is responsible for the color change at the end point. In the titration of strong acid and strong weak base, methyl orange is the chosen indicator. In the titration of strong acid versus strong base, any one of the above indicators can be used. For the titration of weak acid and weak base, no indicator is available. Before starting the titration, let us study the volumetric calculations. The standard solution or titrant is usually taken in the burette, and a known amount of the solution of unknown concentration that is titrant, is usually taken in the conical flask. In some cases, for clarity of the endpoint, we take the solutions in the opposite order also. For standard solution used in most titrations, either molar concentration or normal concentration can be used. Using molar concentration, the amount of a substance present in V liter of the solution of molarity M will be amount in mole, that is volume in liters, multiplied by molarity of the solution. For example, the amount of sodium carbonate present in 250 ml of 0.1 molar solution will be 0.25 liter. Molarity is 0.1 mole per liter. So the amount of sodium carbonate present is 0.025 mole. Converting it into gram, it should be multiplied by the molar mass, that is 106. So 0.25 mole into 106, that is 2.65 gram. Therefore, 250 ml of 0.1 molar solution of sodium carbonate will contain 2.65 gram of sodium carbonate. Continuing with the polymetric calculations. For an acid-base titration, the following relation can be used. Acid plus base giving salt and water. Then we use an alkalimetry titration. That means the concentration of the base is known and acid is the unknown solution. So the titrant will be the alkali and the titrant will be the acid. And the basicity of the acid is A2, molarity is M2, volume of acid taken is V2. Now acidity of the base is A2, molarity is M1, and volume we have to find out. We add an indicator and we add a few drops of the indicator. Now we start titration by training the titrant. So a small pink color appears and that shows the endpoint is very near. Now we add one more drop. So the color change is observed, that is the endpoint. And V1 is the volume of the alkali needed. So we can use this relation. A1 M1 V1 is equal to A2 M2 V2. Therefore, M2 is equal to A1 M1 V1 by A2 V2. A more general relation based on mole ratio is the following. N1 moles of A plus N2 moles of B giving products. Then at the equivalence point, M1 V1 by N1 is equal to M2 V2 by N2. And this is not related to this equation. Here the reactants are A and B and may not be acid or base. Suppose that we want to calculate M2. Then M2 will be N2 into M1 V1 by N1 V2. This relation can be used for any titration including redox titrations. When normality is used, the relation will be N1 V1 is equal to N2 V. Let us take an example. As I said earlier, acidimetry and alkalimetry involve titrations of acids and bases. And such reactions are called neutralization reactions. In acidimetry, standard solutions of acid is used, and in alkalimetry, standard solution of base is used. And first let us consider a strong acid, strong base titration. An example is HCl versus NaOH. The indicator can be either phenolphthalein or methyl orange. Molarity of HCl, let it be M1. Volume of HCl be V1. Molarity of NaOH be M2. And let it be unknown. So the titration will be acidimetry. Volume of NaOH V2. Suppose that we use phenolphthalein as indicator. When phenolphthalein is used, it is better to take the alkali in the burette. The appearance of pale pink color is more visible than the disappearance of pink color. So we add a few drops of phenolphthalein. Now from the burette we run the titrant and we have to shake the flask during the titration. Now we add the last drop, and for a single drop the color change is observed. Now the volume of alkali required is V2 ml. So the relation can be M1 V1 by N1, M2 V2 by 1. So the reaction is like this: HCl plus NaOH giving NaCl plus H2. So if you want to calculate M2, it is M1 V1 by V2. The mass per liter of sodium hydroxide in the given solution is M2 mole per liter into 40 gram per mole, where 40 is the molar mass of sodium hydroxide. That is M2 into 40 gram per liter. We can also use this relation where this is the basicity of the acid and this is the acidity of the base. Since we are using HCl and NaOH, acidity as well as basicity are equal to 1. Now let us see another example, that is a titration between a weak acid and a strong base. As an example, we consider oxalic acid and a sodium hydroxide. Oxalic acid is a weak acid. Since the alkali is strong, the indicator must be phenolphthalein. And for clarity of endpoint, we take sodium hydroxide in the burette. Let the molarity of oxalic acid is M1. Volume of oxalic acid is V1. Molarity of sodium hydroxide is M2. And let it be the unknown quantity. Volume of NaOH is V2. So we add phenolphthalein. 1 or 2 drops of phenolphthalein is added. Now we run the titrant from the burette. Here we use NaOH. So a pale pink color appears for the last drop. The color changes to pink, and that is the end point. Now the volume of NaOH required is V2 ml. So we can use the relation M1 V1 by 1 is equal to M2 V2 by 2. This is because we need 2 moles of NaOH for 1 mole of oxalic acid. Therefore, M2 is equal to 2 M1 V1 by V2. For preparation of standard solution of oxalic acid, molar mass is taken as 126 gram per mole, including the water of crystallization. Now let us take a strong acid weak base titration. An example is HCl and a sodium carbonate. So the mass of sodium carbonate required to prepare 0.1 1 liter solution will be molar mass molarity of the solution, molar mass into V liter, and that will be 10.6 gram. So if we dissolve 10.6 grams sodium carbonate in 1 liter, we'll get a 1 molar solution. Since we are using a strong acid, methyl orange is the indicator. And here the sodium carbonate solution is taken as the standard solution. That is, it is a primary standard. So this is an example of alkalimetry. Suppose the volume of sodium carbonate is V2. We take HCl in the burette, and we take about a fixed amount, for example, usually 20 ml of sodium carbonate solution in the conical flask. We add 1 or 2 drops of methyl orange. So the color will be yellow. So in alkaline medium, methyl orange shows an yellow color. Now we run the HCl from the burette, and a small pink color appears. For the last drop, the color changes to red. So in the acid medium, methyl orange shows a red color. So the volume of acid required is V1 ml. So we can calculate M1 V1 by 2, M2 V2 by 1. This is because the balanced equation is sodium carbonate plus 2 HCl, giving sodium chloride carbon dioxide. So M1 V1 acid, for acid it is M1 V1 by 2 and M2 V2 by 1. So M1 will be 2 M2 V2 by V1. For preparation of standard solution of sodium carbonate, molar mass is taken as 106 gram per mole. Now let us discuss the theory behind redox titrations. Volumetric analysis based on titrations with reducing or oxidizing agents are called redox titrations. In a redox reaction, oxidation and reduction reactions taking place simultaneously. In acid-base titrations, we use indicators which are sensitive to pH change for finding the endpoint. In redox reactions, there occurs a change in potential of the system. The endpoint can be determined by measuring potential or more conveniently using visual indicators. The calculations involved in redox titration requires a balanced equation. Any convenient method can be used for balancing the reaction. Two types of indicators are used in redox titrations. One is self-indication. If the titrant is highly colored, that color may be used to detect the endpoint. A dilute solution of KMnO4 is pink because of the MnO4 minus ions. Its reduction product Mn2 plus is nearly colorless. During titration with potassium permanganate, the purple color of MnO4 minus is removed as soon as it is added because it is reduced to Mn2 plus. Near the equivalence point, a fraction of a drop of excess MnO4 minus solution imparts a definite pink color to the solution, indicating the end point. The second type is redox indicators. These are highly colored dyes that are weak reducing or oxidizing agents. Hence, they can be get oxidized or reduced. The color of oxidized and reduced form are different so that we get an indication of the end point. For example, diphenylamine. In the oxidized state, it produces an intense blue color. Next is titration of potassium permanganate against standard oxalic acid solution. Potassium permanganate acts as a strong oxidizing agent in acidic medium and itself undergo reduction. Oxalic acid act as a reducing agent and it itself undergo oxidation. Hence, oxalic acid can be titrated against potassium permanganate in acidic medium. The ionic equation could be written as the reduction half reaction, that is MnO4 minus plus 8H plus 5 electrons gives Mn2 plus 4H2. The oxidation half reaction C2O4 2 minus giving 2CO2 plus 2E. Balancing, first equation is multiplied by 2, second equation by 1. So the overall balanced equation will be 2MnO4 minus plus 5C2O4 minus 2 minus plus 16H plus gives 2Mn2 plus 10CO2 plus 8H2O. This is sulfuric acid. The acid used in titration should be dilute sulfuric acid. Nitric acid is not used as it is an oxidizing agent. Hydrochloric acid also cannot be used because KMnO4 will oxidize to chlorine. Chlorine also is an oxidizing agent in aqueous solution. For the titration, a known quantity of oxalic acid is taken in a conical flask along with the required amount of sulfuric acid. This mixture should be warmed to 50 to 60 degrees Celsius before starting the titration. Why oxalic acid solution should be warmed before starting the titration? The reaction between KMnO4 and oxalic acid is slow at ordinary temperature. In order to increase the rate of the reaction, a warm solution of oxalic acid is used. As the titration proceeds, Mn2 plus ions, that is manganese sulfate, are produced which act as a catalyst for the same reaction. That is why the reaction goes slowly at first until some Mn2 plus ions are formed. After that, the reaction proceeds at a faster rate. Hence, the titrant KMnO4 must be added in small volumes in the beginning of the reaction. Potassium permanganate acts as a self-indicator. We take potassium permanganate in a burette and a hot solution of oxalic acid in the flask. We run potassium permanganate from the burette till a small pale pink color appears. Now we add a single drop, and for an addition of a single drop, the color changes to pink. That shows the end point of the titration. And this is the volume of KMnO4 needed, that is V1 ml. The balanced equation for the reaction is 2MnO4 minus plus 5C2O4 2 minus plus 16H plus giving 2Mn2 plus 10CO2 plus 8H2. So therefore the titration relation will be M1 V1 by 2, where M1 is the molarity of permanganate and V1 is the volume of permanganate. That is equal to M2 V2 by 5. M2 is the molarity of oxalic acid, V2 is the volume of the oxalic acid. Therefore M1 is equal to 2M2 V2 by 5 V1. M1 is the molarity of KMnO4, V1 is the volume of KMnO4, M2 is the molarity of oxalic acid, V2 is the volume of the oxalic acid. Another titrometric analysis we need to study is the titration between mole salt and potassium permanganate. Mole salt is ferrous ammonium sulfate. Ferrous ammonium sulfate also acts as a reducing agent. The ferrous ion undergo oxidation to ferric ion. Hence, mole salt could be titrated against a potassium permanganate. The rate of the reaction is high at room temperature and hence no heating is required. Potassium permanganate acts as a self-indicator. We take potassium permanganate in the burette and a known volume of mole salt in the conical flask. We start titration by draining potassium permanganate from the burette. The color change occurs for a single drop of potassium permanganate, which shows the end point. Let the required volume of potassium permanganate be P1 ml. The balanced ionic equation for the reaction is MnO4 minus plus 5Fe2 plus 8H plus giving 2Mn2 plus 5Fe3 plus 4H2. Therefore, the titration relation will be M1V1 by 1 equals M2V2 by 5. 1 is the number of moles of MnO4 minus ions and 5 is the number of moles for Fe2 plus ions. If we know M2, we can calculate M1 using this relation. M1 is the molarity of potassium permanganate, V1 is the volume of KMnO4, M2 is the molarity of mole salt, and V2 is the volume of mole salt. The multiple choice questions related to this part, that is part 2, is given in the video part 2b. The link for the video is given in the description part of this video.